Hello, I'm Miss Esther Córdova and welcome to Learning English. Today we are going to learn how to make sentences using the adverbs of frequency. But first, let's watch a video.
My name is Martha. I am a housewife. I always get up at 6 o'clock. I never sleep late. I usually have breakfast. I sometimes walk to the shops. I usually ride my bicycle. I never watch television. I always clean the house in the morning. Then I sometimes have a bath. I always collect my children at 3 p.m. This is my favorite part of the day.
Okay, let's make a pause and we continue. Let's make a review of the video. Okay, what is the video about? In the video, we see a lady. The name of the lady is Martha. And Martha is a housewife. Okay, in these sentences, you see she say how many times she does an action. Let's see.
At 6 o'clock. I never sleep late. I usually have breakfast. I sometimes walk to the shops. I usually ride my bicycle. I never watch television. I always clean the house in the morning.
Okay, you see, these words, always, usually, never, are called frequency adverbs or adverbs of frequency. Let's continue. Okay, we see here two boys, two students. Okay, in the first, here we read, this boy says, I always do my homework and I often ask the teacher for help. And this student says, I am usually late for class and I never do my homework. Okay, the words in red are called frequency adverbs. Always, often, usually, sometimes, and never are adverbs of frequency or frequency adverbs at the same. Here we have the words always, usually, often, sometimes, rarely, never. How many times do we do the action? Always 100% and never 0%. Sometimes in the middle 50%. Here are the examples. There are in red the frequency adverbs. He sometimes study, sometimes, a veces. Here. He rarely studies, or he never studies. Okay, see the picture. Here, he always studies. He usually studies, or he often studies. Here we have the frequency adverbs. Always, usually, sometimes, never, and rarely. Here, how many times do we do the things? Let's see the grammar point. The adverbs of frequency come after the verb be. Here we have the verb be, the verb to be, is, are. Okay, they say that these frequency adverbs come after. A verb to be is first. First the verb to be, then the frequency adverb. But here, with the other verbs like checks, pays, the frequency adverbs come before. Often, usually. She often checks her answers. He usually pays attention in class. Also, we have another expressions we use to say how many do the times. For example, the first one, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and 5 times a week. And this expression we use at the end of the sentences. Take the medicine 3 times a day. We usually go swimming twice a month. Let's practice. Here we have the picture. Takes a shower. The expression twice a day. Here's the frequency adverb. Never, always, often. We can say he never takes a shower twice a day. He always takes a shower twice a day, or he often takes a shower twice a day. Now we are going to practice with the questions. We make question with the word how often. How often means cuán a menudo. How often do we answer never, sometimes, often, and always? How often do you dance? How do we make questions with how often? Use how often to ask about frequency. How many times do the action? How often do you study with a partner? I rarely study with a partner. She's angry. We continue with the practice. How often? How often do you? How often are you? According to the question. For example, fall asleep studying. How often do you fall asleep studying? Be tired. How often are you tired? Okay? The first one. The question. Make the question. Study in a group. Do it. How often do you study in a group? The second. Be bored in class is B. So we have to change. How often are you bored in class? How often are you bored in class? Listen to the teacher. How often do you listen to the teacher? Practice speaking English. How often do you practice speaking English? Be confused. B. You have to change. How often are you confused in class? We continue with the questions. How often? How often do you make your bed? I usually make my bed every day. How often do you go shopping? I always go shopping in the morning. Okay, now let's make a review of what we have learned. We have learned sentences about the times we do in a day, and we use the frequency adverbs. For example, we have this frequency adverbs: always, usually, often, sometimes, seldom, rarely, and never. Here are the examples. Do you remember? I always go to the cinema. They are sometimes late. And questions with how often. How often do you go to the cinema? Okay, that's all for today. Thank you.